Hi, I'm Pastor Kerry Cameron here at First United Methodist Church, and I want to share a little story with you. One day, one of the congregational members came in, whose name is also Kerry, came in to discuss Jesus. He wanted to know who Jesus was. He wanted to know, in particular, what did Jesus look like? Well, I offered my explanation for Jesus having brown skin because he was of Middle Eastern descent. And in Kerry's mind, he felt perhaps Jesus was white because that is how Jesus has been portrayed through the ages in paintings. And so we finally decided that perhaps Jesus comes to each of us in a different way, the ways in which we can see him clearly. And for each person, it could be different. It wasn't long after we ended that conversation, I got a phone call, and it was Kerry on the other end, and he was frantic. He was frantic. He was beside himself, and he blurted out to me, "Pastor Kerry, I don't know what to do. I didn't know who to call. I just saw Jesus. I just saw Jesus." And I, of course, who believe in God being fully present with us, just said, "Hallelujah, Kerry, you saw Jesus, now you know what he looks like." And once Kerry was able to catch his breath and actually have a conversation about this extraordinary experience that happened to him, I asked him, "Do you suppose Jesus came to you so you could really see him for who he was?" Whether Kerry saw someone that was dressed like Jesus, or he saw just a vision of Jesus, or that it was Jesus himself, I believe Jesus was there with him that day on the hiking trail. And Kerry wanted you, the viewers, to hear his story. And so he's going to share it with you now. And I just want to say, he's a changed man.
Hi everybody, my name's Carrie Lonergan, and I'm a lifelong resident of Vermont. I live in the beautiful little city of Winooski, which is attached to Burlington, the largest city in our state. I moved into Winooski just 2 years ago, and I'm a long-time hiker. I love hiking in the woods all around Vermont and up in my area, and I was very glad to find out that when I moved into Winooski, just literally a stone throw from my new apartment, is a very nice, well-kept hiking trail called the Casper Overlook hiking trail owned by the city. And I have taken that trail at least 3 times a week, even in the wintertime, for the last 2 years, and I know this trail very well. Where I enter in, which is just past the railroad tracks of Winooski, is sort of a difficult hike, and you do not see people on this trail very often. The first 1.5 to 3/4 to 2 are quite challenging, and so it's during that time on the hike in the morning that I reflect on God and thank God for all the beautiful splendor I enjoy on each and every hike. I never not enjoy a hike. So, like many times, I was out and I was starting a hike, and I have to share with you this story that I encountered while on my hike. So, as always, I just came walking down along, and I know the trail, and the corner I turned around, there was only one straightaway on this whole trail, and it's about 60 feet long. I came around the corner and looked down at my feet for my footing, and as I looked up at the end of the trail in this pitch black dark hollow, and this was 2 in the afternoon on a Friday, and there, to my astonishment, I could see clearly Jesus. And it was from the knees up, because there's a huge stump of a tree that had been cut, and it was blocking at that point his knees down. He had a very gauze type inner outfit with linen robe over the top. The white gauze outfit was very, very bright. I could see distinctly he had no tie around his robe. It hung straight, and it was a much darker white, off-white, than the other, and he showed up very well in this hollow. And I looked and I went, "My God, that's Jesus. That's Jesus." And I'm like, okay, let's be real. Could it be the real Jesus? How can I see the real Jesus? Who am I? I'm an average guy. Why it was important for me to see him then, there at that time. I don't know. I always hike in the morning when it's cool, and I've seen the sunshine right down there, and you can't even see the hollow. That's at 11 a.m. By 2, the sun is over, and the hollow is pitch black. I had errands to run for my family in the morning, so I took an afternoon hike, and I felt for some reason compelled to hike in the afternoon, which I never do because it was 90 degrees out that day. But nonetheless, I felt that I needed to get out and take this hike. So, as I said, I saw Jesus at the end there, and I said, you know what? This guy has the best Jesus outfit in the world. Hollywood cannot make a better Jesus than this Jesus. This guy is great. And I was like, well, that's an awful elaborate outfit. And then he started to move. And as he came around the stump and onto the straightaway, after about 5 or just 6 feet, I noticed something very peculiar and different. His legs weren't moving. There was no cadence to his walk. There was no knees moving, feet shifting. And he was just as stiff as a cardboard cutout, except in full 3D. He never flinched, never moved. His robe sleeves were very, very long. I never saw his hands through the whole ordeal. And he started moving up the trail, and his gown in front of him and his robe were moving with him a foot out in front of his shoe. Okay, right there, that defies, pardon me, the law of physics. That's impossible. No man can make a fabric flow through there. And the other part is, with that gauze outfit on, there are overgrown raspberry bushes, pricker bushes, all of it, and you would get shredded. I get shredded with bare legs. A gauze in an outfit wouldn't stand a prayer, and he was a mile from the city. And so I was like, could I really be seeing Jesus? So I stepped out of the way as best I could. It's a very narrow path. You'll see that in the photos. And one photo you'll see over my shoulder is up in the air where that's the interstate. That'll give you a little bit of a bearing where I am on the trail. The interstate going to the Winooski River was right above me when I started with the trail. And so I'm watching him come up the trail. He was going pretty slow, just gliding. Didn't move his mouth, his eyes. He wasn't sweating. He wasn't breathing. Nothing. And I was so caught up of him moving so effortlessly like that. It was hard to wrap my head around that I was fully seeing something that was not a man. This was not human. This really most likely was Jesus. I was very overwhelmed at that point. And I still couldn't get fully out of the way. And as he came up, I thought, well, when he gets close to me, I'll wave and say hi. I say hi to all the people on the trail. I'm an ambassador of goodwill. So I said, well, when he gets 7 feet in front of me, I'm not going to wait till he gets too close. I want to be able to look at him, and I'm going to wave. And I waved twice, folks. I went, hi, hi. And of course, not a flinch, not a wink, not a nothing. So I was like, this guy is still going to run into me, shoulder to shoulder. And as he got even closer to me, about 6 to 5 feet out, I could see the beads around his neck, his necklace. He had 4 rows to his necklace. There were small beads up on the top, underneath his beard. You couldn't see his neck. The second row was just a little bit bigger beads, round like the other. The third one was definitely a medium bead, bigger and rounder. And the fourth part of his necklace was round and also rectangular pieces of wood that made his necklace up. And they were all red, green, and blue, the African colors, and I'm not sure what that meant. He had a not real dark brown, not a real light brown cross hanging from the 4th row down. I could see distinctly a very simple, basic cross around his neck. And it's like I could even see the wood grain on the yellow, big parts of his necklace, the beads, because they weren't painted. This was mine. They were like stained, and it was like a faint yellow, and I could literally see the wood grain. That's how well I see. And I still was bracing for impact. As he got almost right on me, he took a little step aside. That's the only movement that I had seen. And when he stepped aside, folks, and pressed the grasses and bushes down just a little bit, it made no sound whatsoever. Mine, when I did it, crinkled and crunched and everything else. And so as I looked at his toes popped out from under his robe. I could see all 5 of his toes and just a tiny bit of his instep. He had these sandals that were oval. They looked 2,000 years old. They were dried and crinkled, and they weren't even cut around like a foot shape. It was like a big old oval with a string of leather come up between his 2 toes, the big toe actually, and his next toe, but I couldn't see where it attached because his robe covered all of his ankle. I just saw that much of it. And strangely and oddly enough, folks, on his big toe, I saw 5 or 6 really coarse black hairs. And I thought, that's peculiar. I wonder why that. But as I was looking down to look down, I was like, oh, I looked at his left foot, my left foot, which both were in the path. And I could see that his robe was all around the side of my hiking shoe, which you'll see in one of the pictures that I simulated. And I was just amazed that I could see the robe coming over the side of my shoe. And I really braced again. I was still for impact on my shoulder. And so as I just rolled my eyes up, I could see the long sleeve of his robe come right over the wrist of my left hand. It came right up the side of my forearm, just past my elbow, and came out on the back of my tricep. And at that point, I was just overwhelmed in breathtaking. I couldn't believe it, that I was experiencing this to such detail and so fully. And of course, then I looked up, and his shoulder was behind me. I never felt anything, didn't feel his sleeve, folks, but he was behind me. I took a step, because I just said, I'll go on my hike. I couldn't believe what I saw. My legs started to give out on the right, gave out on the left. I tried one more step, and I said, I just got to stop and try to see what's going on. And he was gone. It was just only a couple seconds, 2-3 seconds for his steps. And folks, when I looked back at me, he had at least 15 to 20 steps for a person to make it to that next blind corner that I had come from. And he was gone. I've talked over with my pastor, people at church. It's a very serious encounter, fully real. And I'll tell you, I've been overwhelmed. Sometimes I've felt burdened, and there's been some days I literally cried. And I need to share this experience of meeting Jesus with you. This encounter, I absolutely just have to.